I want to wrap up with just a couple more tips. You heard me talk before about choosing an applique shape and resizing it. So for the initial coaster that I did, I only used the default size for my shapes for the applique. So this time I'm going to show you what you would do if you wanted to increase that to make sure that you had full coverage of your satin stitch over that placement line and the cut line. So I'm going to choose a heart this time. I'm going to start with the straight stitch just like we did before. I'm going to touch set. I'm going to touch edit, size, and I want to increase this to a height of about 3. But what I'm going to pay attention to is how many times I touch the proportional button to increase the size, because I want to create the satin stitch outline in the exact same amount of percentage, and it's very hard to judge that by number. So I'm just going to count. Got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That brings me to about 3, which is what I want. I'm going to touch OK. I'm going to touch add, and now I'm going to go in and select that heart with the satin stitch. I'm going to touch set. I'm going to touch edit, size, and again, this time I want it to increase proportionately, so I'm going to touch this 10 times. I want to make sure it beeps. So that's, let me reset that so I can make sure I counted that. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. Now, you can't see with the colors that I have here that's got good coverage. So I'm going to go ahead and change the color tab for that black to a very pale pink. And I'm going to use my magnification keys so that you can see that. And when you look at this, your cut line for your straight stitch should be right in the center of that satin stitching. And that way I know that I have increased those proportionately 10 times for each one. And when I cut on that line and then stitch over with that satin stitch, I'm going to get full coverage of the raw edge. So that's the way you want to do that. All right, the last thing I want to show you is how you would conserve fabric if you didn't want to layer your whole piece with your batting and use up this extra that you're going to get cut away when you do your coaster. So you go ahead and hoop your batting and then cut your fabric so that it is larger all the way around than your finished coaster. So if I'm doing a coaster of about 4 3/4, I cut this square piece 5.5 inches square. You could go even larger. Just make sure that you have enough coverage to completely fill the area for your coaster. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to center this in your hoop. So you can use the little guidelines that you have right on your hoop there and make sure that is centered. So I'm going to go ahead and just slip this in, and I'm just going to stitch the final outline of that coaster so that you could see that I would have the right size there. I can actually do a trial run using my trial key. So let's go ahead and do that so I can see where my top of the design is, bottom. All right, so I'm cutting that a little bit close there. I might need to move that down, or I might need to cut that a little bit larger. And there's my right hand edge and my left hand edge. So use your trial key. Make sure that you've got enough margin all the way around so that you're leaving yourself about a 1/2 inch seam allowance, and your coaster is going to be fine on there. And that way you just use a smaller piece. And then I would also probably do a little bit of taping here, at least on the edges, so that doesn't move around. Most fabric is going to stick pretty well to batting, but you just want to have a little bit of extra security. Okay, so that will save you a little bit of fabric. Hope you enjoyed these final tips.